Tonight, we're going to talk about breathing and its impacts on the brain. Hopefully today, we'll talk exactly how breathing and oxygen, what they do for your body. You're going to understand some of the different types of breathing. There's different ways that we breathe. Is shallow breathing bad? How can we improve our breathing techniques for better health? Are we even focusing on breathing? That's one of the first steps. Do we just go all day and hopefully my body says you got to breathe, right? Yeah. We just go. I don't think about my breath. One person I told you don't even need your brain to breathe. You don't even need it. If you had zero brain, you'd still breathe. It's because your brain stem is what controls your breathing. Your brain stem, which isn't really your brain. It's a certain primitive part, your reptilian part of your brain is your brain stem. So if you didn't even have a brain, you'd still be able to breathe, actually. This is why when people, they have serious neck injuries and things, and they actually have to put them on a ventilation because that's the part of the brain they'd injure is their brain stem. So breathing is controlled by this complex, this pre-Bonzinger, and this tiny group of brain cells functions like a pacemaker. It does this in the following ways. When you're properly, if you're unconscious or asleep, you don't have to think about breathing, right? We don't really think about unconscious, but definitely when we're sleeping, we're not thinking about it. So there's this built-in pacemaker in our brainstem, this area that keeps your rhythm. Changes in your breathing rhythm are going to depend on your emotional state, and it's also going to allow like a takeover or control of breathing during activities like meditation and certain exercise. So this pacemaker, so to speak, can be controlled by higher centers in your brain, but it takes a lot of focus and control to do that. Otherwise, it's going to run on its own. There's chemistry that affects this as well. Breathing is very important because your chemistry depends on it. Oxygen is fuel for your body because it allows your cells to make energy. Without oxygen, you can't make ATP, which is energy source for your body. If you're not breathing well, you're not taking deep enough breaths, the amount of oxygen and circulation of oxygen is reduced down, which means that your body's working really hard to keep your cells energetic. Chiropractic adjustments, on the most simple sense, can help to increase mobility of the rib cage when you get adjusted, which allows you to actually get more oxygen in when you take one breath. So just having adjustments on a regular basis allow you to work less hard and get more oxygen so that really you're increasing your lifespan and your efficiency throughout life just by getting an adjustment because more oxygen means more energy. This all ties together. This is the whole part of this. Breathing isn't just about keeping your heart beating because breathing is totally separate. The biology of the breath. When your breathing is relaxed and deep, your lungs get more air. This means that the oxygen in your red blood cells is increased. You have lots of red blood cells. If you're not getting enough oxygen, your body may try to produce more red blood cells to help get oxygen to your tissues, but you still have to be really bringing that in. Iron deficiency is very common. And so if you don't have iron, you can't actually bind oxygen to your red blood cells. So this is where chemistry and nutrition all play a role in this. When your nervous system is relaxed, it's going to shift into more of a digesting and resting state. Your breath can control this. It can stimulate this from our brains. Your blood pressure lowers. Your brain thinks it's going to think more clearly. Your cortisol is also reduced. The stress hormone is reduced when you're taking deep, healthy breaths. Your circulation improves because your heart has less stress and less tension. Healing becomes more efficient, and the list goes on and on. So when your breathing is in a relaxed state, you get all the benefits. But most of us don't live in that resting and digesting state. So our bodies are kind of programmed into that shallow breathing. This is crazy. This is how many times you breathe a day. You imagine that pacemaker is just going and going and going. This is the average. There are lots of different breathing techniques, I should say. And we're going to go into those a little bit, but most people kind of know that deep breathing is diaphragmatic breathing. We're going to really kind of take a deep breath by lowering our diaphragm and really focusing on belly breathing. There's also shallow breathing. It's kind of thoracic. It's where we're actually just lifting our rib cage with these muscles here. All these muscles in the side of my neck, they lift the rib cage. So if you're really trying to get as much oxygen as you can, you're going to be working those muscles, you're going to work in this muscle, you're working every muscle you can. But most of the time, your body doesn't try to get into those deep muscles because it actually takes a little more conscious effort and control. Nasal breathing, just through the nose. A sigh, that's also a breath. These are ways that your body challenges and changes the breathing. Tidal breathing is another one of those. So the tidal breath, this is your natural, relaxed breathing pattern. This is when you're not really at rest, but you're not stressed. You're not exercising, but you're just consciously sitting there, and you're not trying to control the breath. This is the inhale and exhale that is equal in length. Inhale, exhale. This is tidal breathing. This is what your body will do when it's not under conscious control. This is usually just a small amount of air you're moving, so you're not putting a lot in the lungs, you're not pushing a lot of CO2 out of your lungs. The sigh. This is a reflex. This results from the breath being held, crying, trying to relax. This happens when the body senses that carbon dioxide is building up in your body and the lungs aren't inflating enough. So if you have too much carbon dioxide building up, then the body knows that you need to get rid of more of that carbon dioxide. So it's going to inflate the lungs so that it can remove oxygen with a deeper exhale, or remove carbon dioxide while it brings in oxygen. A sigh is, it re-expands these air cells they're called alveoli, but these sacs, those sacs sometimes don't get stimulated enough. This is why we want people to move and exercise, and once a week we usually recommend some sort of higher intensity exercise that gets your heart rate up, so you're breathing heavier and harder, because you want to keep your lungs at their capacity. If you never challenge your body's capacity, then you're going to lose it. If you don't use it, you lose it. And very slowly, all of a sudden you might think, well, man, I can't even do that anymore. I get winded, I get tired. But you're not going to feel like doing that if you've got a lot of problems. That's why we're here, just to try to help give you hope and give you a change in your body, so that maybe an adjustment helps to loosen you up. As you start testing your body, you can start to challenge it more. So we need you to trust your body. One of the most simple ways is to start to see its capacity is these breathing exercises. But a sigh is very much, if you know people who sigh all the time, their body is trying to relax. And they're having a hard time doing it. So they sigh all the time. Nasal breathing is typically probably when people are sleeping or they're doing a lot of physical performance and exercise. The nose helps in filtering air. It helps to humidify the air. It usually boosts nitric oxide production, which is going to increase the blood vessels, to increase their size, so you can get more oxygen to more places. So your nose breathing, nasal breathing, is very helpful in just general sense. And we can utilize that when we're doing breath work, but the nose is there. It actually has a little almost shelves inside that recirculate air to warm it up, so that when you're putting it into your body, it's prepared and ready. And that's why you're stuffy and you're just trying to do mouth breathing. That's very unhealthy for your body in the long term. Mouth breathing. This is intense exercise. If you're really pushing it, you're going to use every one of these things. But people have congestion, or out of habit, they breathe out of their mouth. Mouth breathing is really less effective, definitely at filtering. And it can lead to similar dry mouth, poorer sleep, higher stress levels. Mainly if the body is getting signals that there's a challenge to get in air, or that the body isn't working at its highest level, then it kind of increases this cortisol, that stress hormone, which kind of leads to a lot of other things as well. So mouth breathing is less efficient of our breath, but can be done. This is deep breathing. We talk about this is a diaphragmatic breathing. This usually has to be cultivated on your own. You're going to have to do this yourself, unless it's a sigh or something, or a yawn. But this is your body really trying to being able to activate that parasympathetic, that rest and relax system. Deep breaths are going to help in reducing stress and anxiety and improving that oxygen exchange. So the slower that we breathe in, the more oxygen we breathe in, the more we get that carbon dioxide out of our cells, and that exchange is more efficient in a more intense level. So I know that there's a state they call like hyperoxygenation, and
that's correct.
And then there's a state where in breathing where you do so many deep breaths and then you kind of hold, like you have CO2. What's the reason for some of that? Like why is that
when science came along and found out what he was doing, they couldn't figure out how and why he was able to, if you will, maintain his sanity. And what happens is the spinal cord actually will come up and start to massage parts of the brain. So you get this release of endorphins and androstenedione, all the lovely hormones that we talk about, and helps reduce the cortisol in that. And as a result, that's why he culminates it with doing the cold bath or the ice plunge, afterwards.
Yeah.
And so as a result, because you're in this hyper state and you're in this euphoric, giddy state, you can do then hard things. And if you ever look at people that like the people that do free diving and deep breathing, do you ever see them in there? Come on, let's go. No, they're always in this parasympathetic state, right? So they're calm, cool, and collected, because they have to take that deep breath. And some of the deep divers that hold weight and hold records, they can hold their breath. Even Navy SEALs, I think, are up to like 2.5, 3 minutes. They can hold their breath underwater. That stuff's just like crazy. But
so in Wim Hof breathing, for some people like this, he had developed his breathing technique. Explain kind of the mechanism of that first.
Okay.
Where you get to the point where you're massaging the brain.
Right. So what you're going to do is you're going to build up to it. So you're actually, I'm going to use this prop here for a second because I like to use props. So this goes in into the diaphragmatic breathing that Doc was talking about. So back in the days when we used to make a phone book, okay, that's this way I teach. This is the way I teach when I guide people through the class. Is you're laying down flat on the floor and you're going to hold this phone book or a weight or whatever it is over top of your belly button, okay? And what you want to do?
You're laying on your back.
Correct. You're laying on your back. I can't do it here because
I used to lay on this and then push into it. It was kind of fun.
You can do that, sure.
For my ab work. But you're laying on your back.
So you're laying prone on your back, face up, okay, and you're going to put some kind of weight or a book here. And what you want to do is you want to move the book before you move your shoulders. There are benefits as you're going through here today doing these different types of breathing, but in this case, to engage that parasympathetic and to engage the hormonal response to all those hormones that we're talking about, the cascade, the massage the brain, this is the way you do this.
Just so you guys know, all those are just ways you breathe. Those aren't necessarily therapeutic breathing.
Correct.
This is the therapeutic breathing. That's why we brought Brian.
Yeah, so when you do this then, so you're going to be laying down, obviously I wouldn't hold it there, but you're going to... So you can't see it because it's over top of my belly, but what you're going to do is you're going to move the weight or move whatever book or whatever it is that's on your belly. You want to move that before you move your shoulders. And that's how you get, and actually, we only use about 60% of our lungs, 60 to 70% of our lung capacity. When you start doing this kind of work, next thing you know, you're using like almost 95% of your lung capacity.
Yeah.
So and that's where people don't understand that. But once you do so many of the breaths, then you hold the breath.
Right.
So you do an inhale and hold it. Then you do 2 to 3 recovery breaths. Then you do an exhale and hold it.
It's really starting to exercise your capacity of your lungs.
Correct.
Which is huge, which is very good.
Yeah.
So deep breathing is where you start to become in control and you start to push your body past some of that normal breathing.
Right.
This shallow breathing, just again, we talk about types of breath. These are just breaths that you can go through. These aren't necessarily therapeutic, but shallow breathing is really that unintentional breathing. It tends to happen when you're stressed, you're anxious. You physically exert yourself, you're going to probably use that some, but the oxygen isn't fully getting to your lungs. Now, if you ever felt like if you were had so much anxiety, you feel like you didn't breathe. It's probably because you're such breathing, you're holding it, but you're also like, if you did breathe, it was so shallow you probably didn't even realize you breathed, and you didn't get a lot of oxygen. So when your brain's going to react to your breath, and your breath reacts to your brain. So it's a loop. And if you can start to control and help massage that brain and release those endorphins and chemicals, it's because you control it with your physical body, can start to change how your brain is making work. But one way to start to reset a lot of these patterns of neurology that you have built in is your physiology. And if you can do that by just simply breathing, it doesn't cost work. You don't have to pay me any extra to do breath work. You don't have to buy any equipment. The oxygen's there. It might not be as good in your house as it is if you go outside and stand with your bare feet on the ground, but breath work is going to be one of the probably most effective ways to tune you in to be what we call mindful or present. It's been studied that most people are engaged in shallow breathing every single day. This many people, 70-80% of our society is in shallow breathing. Is it really that bad? Well, it is. Because oxygen is so important. If you feel tired, start doing breath work. If you feel foggy, do breath work. If someone says you got a weak heart, do breath work. It's all is affecting us. Fatigue, your blood vessels, it's all being affected. And if you just start to challenge your body's ability to move blood around, because the more you breathe, the more the body's going to know that it's got to move oxygen around. And it's going to be a huge feedback loop. So we don't want to decrease oxygen. We want to increase oxygen. The more oxygen, the more calm you are, the more clarity you have. Less oxygen, more stress, foggy, and fatigued. So shallow breathing leads to stress, fogginess, and fatigue. Deep breathing, the opposite. This is huge. This is a father of really integrative medicine here. Says, if I had to limit my advice on healthier living to just one tip, okay? This is a guy who's integrative. I mean, he could tell you to do anything. He could tell you to do red light therapy or eat tomatoes or whatever he would tell you. He would say to breathe correctly. And I don't think that there's anything more I can say about how important this is than someone who's been and accessed every type of therapy to try to help you heal naturally and says it's all about the breath. So before we leave, we all must take one really deep, deep cleansing breath, okay? I'm going to count. We're going to do it for like the count of 5, and then we're going to try to hold it for a count of 5, and then we're going to have to let it go for a count of 5, okay? You guys all with me? It's like a box breath. So in the count of 3, we're going to start. Ready? 1, 2, 3, breathe in. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now I want you to hold it. Just hold that breath. Hold, hold, hold. 4, 3, 2, 1, and slowly let it go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just sit. and that's a box breath. Very nice. Just think of how you could do that very simply. Anytime, anywhere, you can do breath work. It's that important. This was just touching the surface on why the heck do we breathe. So you guys start working on your breath, being more conscious of it, making it deep. And if you want to, you can look up some things on Wim Hof breathing, because that's kind of one of the premieres, I think, of that. All right. You guys have a good night.